This
The
is
first time she
unacceptable.
said
You
it,
went
her
behind
voice
my
barely
back.
I
rose
had
above a
to. There
whisper.
wasn't time to
You
explain.
still
That's
owe
not
rent.
good enough.
No
I know.
accusation,
I'm
no
sorry.
impatience. Just a gentle reminder that landed heavier than any threat could have. I stood in the doorway of the narrow
What
storage
have you
office I
done?
had secretly turned
What I
into my
had to.
bedroom,
Why
clutching a
didn't you
paper
tell
cup
me?
of cold
I
tea.
couldn't.
The fifth
You
floor of
can't
the
keep
corporate
avoiding
building was
this.
almost
I'm not.
empty
It's
at night,
complicated.
the kind of
Complicated?
silence
Just
that
tell me
made
the
every
truth.
breath
I
sound
am.
loud.
I can't do
The
this
hallway
anymore.
lights flickered
Hey,
weakly
you're not
as if
alone.
even electricity
hurts
was
so
tired of
much.
working
I'm here.
overtime.
We'll get through
I
it.
know, I replied quietly. I haven't forgotten. She nodded once, not unkindly. Her eyes were calm but worn, the eyes of someone who had learned not to expect fairness from the world. This was Myra, the owner of the building, and lately the only person who seemed to notice whether I existed or not. 3 months earlier, I had arrived in the city full of hope. Halcyon Systems had offered me a position that promised stability and growth. They spoke of loyalty, of teamwork, of building futures together. I believed every word. The first month, my salary arrived late but in full. The second month only half came with apologies from HR about technical problems. The third month, nothing came at all. At first I waited patiently, then I sent emails, then I visited the finance department in person. Each time I was told to check again next week. Weeks passed, rent did not wait. So I rented the cheapest space I could find, a forgotten office on the 5th floor that officially stored old files and broken chairs. At night I pushed 2 desks together and slept there, using my jacket as a blanket and my bag as a pillow. Myra never embarrassed me in front of others, she never raised her voice. Every week she came alone, stood by the door, and said the same gentle sentence. You still owe rent. That night after she left, I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and counted the coins in my pocket. They were not even enough for a bus ticket 1 week. She had given me 1 more week. The next morning I arrived early at Halcyon, hoping to finally speak to someone important. The lobby shone with polished marble and glass, designed to make visitors believe this company was perfect. Inside the elevator, 2 managers whispered to each other. Move it before the audit. The junior staff won't question it. The doors opened before I could hear more. At my desk, my computer screen was already on. That was strange. I never left it running. An email window was open, not sent to me but impossible to ignore. Subject, Phase 2, Salary Hold Strategy. My heart began to race. I should have closed it. I knew I should. But hunger and fear make people brave or foolish, and sometimes both. The message explained everything: funds temporarily transferred, employee payments delayed, executive bonuses protected. At the bottom was the approval, the CEO's name. The man who smiled in company meetings and spoke about family values was stealing from his own workers. My hands trembled as I shut the email. All around me, keyboards clicked and phones rang, normal sounds in a place that suddenly felt poisonous. That evening, I returned to the 5th floor later than usual. The lights were off except in one room. Myra was inside, kneeling on the floor, repairing a loose board with a small hammer. You're late, she said without looking up. Busy day, I replied. She studied my face, then stood and dusted her hands. Did you eat? I shook my head. Without a word, she opened her bag and handed me a warm sandwich wrapped in paper. Take it. You look like you're disappearing. I hesitated, ashamed, then accepted it. The first bite almost made me cry. We sat in silence for a moment, then she spoke softly. They still haven't paid you, have they? No, she sighed. My father worked for them too. I looked up. He cleaned their offices for 20 years, she said. When he died, they still owed him 3 months' salary. I begged. They ignored me. Her voice did not shake, but her hands did. That night, lying on the cold floor, I made a decision. If they were stealing from us, someone had to stop them. The next day, I stayed late. When the office emptied, I opened the internal server. I searched slowly, carefully, following the numbers. What I found was worse than the email had shown. Dozens of unpaid employees, fake accounts, secret transfers. This was not delay, this was betrayal. I copied everything onto a small drive. As I stood up, the lights suddenly turned on. The CFO stood in the doorway, smiling. Careful, he said softly. Some doors should never be opened. That night, when Myra came to remind me again, I said the words that changed everything. What if, I asked quietly, I offered you something more than rent? She stared at me as if I had spoken in another language. Something more, she repeated. Not money, I said. Justice, the word sounded too big for the small hallway, but once it was spoken, it refused to disappear. I told her everything, about the email, about the hidden transfers, about the CEO's approval, about the drive in my pocket that now held proof strong enough to destroy careers and maybe my own life. She listened without interrupting, her face slowly changing from confusion to disbelief and finally to quiet anger. So they're doing it again, she whispered. The same people who stole from my father. Yes, she looked at the floor for a long time. And you want what? I don't know yet, I admitted. But I know if I stay silent, nothing changes. Silence filled the hallway again, heavier than before. Finally, she said, "Come with me." She unlocked a small room I had never entered. Inside were dusty shelves, old files, and a desk covered with papers. She pulled open a drawer and took out a worn folder. "These are my father's documents," she said, "his contract. His unpaid salary records, all useless now, or so I thought." She placed the folder beside my drive. "For years I thought kindness meant accepting injustice quietly," she said. "But maybe kindness sometimes means fighting." The next morning I didn't go to work. Instead, I went to the labor court. I stood in line with the folder in one hand and the drive in the other, my heart pounding so hard I felt dizzy. When my turn came, I handed everything to the clerk and told the story as simply as I could. By evening, inspectors were already at Halcyon. Phones rang nonstop. Managers whispered in corners. The CEO canceled all meetings and locked himself in his office. 2 days later, I was fired. No explanation, no farewell. I returned to the 5th floor carrying a cardboard box with my belongings. Myra was waiting outside my door. "It's on the news," she said quietly. "They're investigating." I nodded. "I'm sorry, I still can't pay." She smiled for the first time since I had met her. "You don't owe rent anymore," she said. "What? You paid in full," she replied, with courage. The investigation spread faster than anyone expected. More employees came forward. Bank records surfaced. Executives resigned. The CEO was arrested. Weeks later, the company announced it would pay all delayed salaries with interest. On the day the money finally arrived in my account, I went straight to Myra. "I can pay everything now," I said, almost laughing. She shook her head. "Keep it. You earned it." "But instead," she said, "help me fix the building. My father always said a place survives only when people care for it." So I stayed. Not as a tenant hiding in an office, but as someone rebuilding broken walls, broken trust, and sometimes broken hearts. Months passed. One evening, as we painted the hallway together, she said softly, "Do you regret it?" "Losing my job?" I asked. "Yes, risking everything." I thought about the cold nights, the hunger, the fear. Then I thought about the faces of the workers who finally received what they deserved. "No," I said. "For the first time I feel rich." She smiled. Later, I found another job, a smaller company. Honest people, modest pay, but every month my salary arrived on time. Sometimes tenants complained, sometimes repairs failed, sometimes life was still unfair, but one thing never changed. Whenever someone struggled, Myra never said, "You must leave." She always said gently, "We'll find a way." Years later, when the building was finally fully restored, she placed a small plaque near the entrance. It didn't have her name, it didn't have mine. It only said, "This place was saved by someone who chose courage over comfort." And every time I passed it, I remembered the night she said, "You still owe rent," and how kindness, when mixed with bravery, can quietly change everything. Because sometimes the greatest payment is not money. Sometimes it is doing the right thing when no one is watching.